Now joined by TSN Hockey Insider Pierre LeBrun and our Edmonton Oilers reporter Ryan Rishaug. So a full skate for the Oilers this morning. So that makes it 5 straight days on the ice for a lot of guys, including Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, who made a surprise appearance at that unexpected optional practice yesterday. What do you make of how they're talking about this approach?
Yeah, well, sometimes it's about rest this deep into the playoffs. I think last year, if you were to ask the Oilers, they felt like maybe they were burning out a bit by the time they got to this point of the Stanley Cup final. That's not the case this year. They're leaning into this and putting the work in, Mark. So they were originally supposed to have a day off the day after the game. Players said forget it. They wanted to be on the ice, a full team skate and up-tempo. The next day, yesterday was supposed to be a day off. McDavid and Draisaitl said nope, they wanted to be on the ice, so they went and took the optional skates, and then a full team skate today. So that's 3 days from the time of that loss to the time the puck will drop, and they'll have pregame skate tonight as well. So, Pierre, to me, this is about a group not happy with where their game is at, not happy with the way it's different to be tired versus not feeling like you have the legs. And to me, they went in search by putting the work in.
Yeah, and Ryan, I think it shows a lot of leadership too when it's those two players leading the charge for an optional on a day off. On the other hand, it kind of flies in the face of sports science. Honestly, if you talk to most teams around the league, they feel that if you play this deep in June, that time off the ice is actually more beneficial. But listen, they know their bodies, they know their team, and the Oilers feel this gets them more ready for Game 4. The contrast with Florida is really apparent. I mean, guys like Barkov and Reinhart and Tkachuk are off the ice as often as possible here during these playoffs, especially in the last couple of weeks. No one's 100%. But again, Florida has really leaned into their sports science in terms of knowing how much time on the ice they want. So it's interesting the two teams have handled this differently.
You know what it reminds me a little bit of? Remember the Four Nations? We were all marveling at how much Sidney Crosby and Nate McKinnon wanted to be on the ice. Between games on the off days, and McDavid obviously was there and witnessing all of that.
Yeah, so the Panthers haven't had a full team skate since the morning of Game 1, so an interesting difference in approaches there. Oilers making a couple lineup changes. Ryan, you predicted them yesterday accurately. Of course, Jeff Skinner comes in for Victor Arvidsson up front, and Troy Stetcher comes in for John Klingberg on the back end. But Edmonton also making a change to their top line. What's going into that?
Yeah, Stetcher coming in is significant. The switch that they're making with Jeff Skinner as well. But really, when you tweak the top line, so Connor Brown goes next to Connor McDavid and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in place of Corey Perry. Connor Brown at times this year has shown he can handle bigger minutes and more offensive line mates. It's been a little while, though, since he's sort of shown that level. We know he was dealing with an injury here as recently as the start of this round. So it's going to be interesting to see how Connor Brown manages being in that situation. This is a reliable player. There's good synergy there with him and Connor McDavid. So, Pierre, to me, this is, Chris Knoblauch has a good touch. He generally knows what his team needs, and most of the buttons he pushes and the levers he pulls work. This is an interesting one, this shift with Connor Brown.
Yeah, and Ryan, I probably shouldn't have to say this, but again, it's a reminder to me how much they miss Zach Hyman in this series. I mean, he's just such a fixture with Connor McDavid. The reality is, whether it's Perry or Brown or anyone, you're just not going to replace the kind of net front presence that Hyman would have had. But that's life. He's out. Stetcher going in is interesting to me because he talked to us this morning and talked about how his forte as a player is making simple plays and live to see another day, maybe rim pucks off glass if you're under pressure. We talked about this before Game 1. To me, the great setup in terms of these two teams was the Florida forecheck against the Oilers' ability to move pucks out but hold on to pucks and make plays, which is what Paul Coffey wants. I think Florida's won that matchup so far in this series, and I think that the Oilers are going to have to rim more pucks off glass than they would like to. It's not their DNA, but I think they have to minimize the turnovers that we saw from Game 3.
And here's the other thing about Troy Stetcher next to Darnell Nurse. So, they've tried different defensemen there. They've tried a bunch of different pairings. They went to it late in the season, and it was really something the way it worked. If you look at Nurse's numbers when he has Stetcher versus some of the other defensemen, it's proven itself to be a really efficient pairing. So while Stetcher might not be considered in that top 6 defenseman on the team, he works so well with Nurse. There's a real temptation to have him in there.
And if I can just add one thing, because we just talked about the Oilers' DNA and wanting to make plays and not get rid of pucks. I thought Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, he mentioned 3 times during his media availability with us, we got to go back to playing with speed. We've got to go back to playing with speed. So you understand what's been talked about in these team meetings here the last couple of days is that the Panthers got to play their game the other night. The Oilers want to play their game here.
And the fact that he skated today tells us he's getting healthier, Nugent-Hopkins, because he hadn't been taking the game day skates.
Although, Pierre, you noticed something during his media availability.
Well, he didn't take his hand. He didn't have his hands out of his hoodie. Listen, it's comfortable to have your hands in the pocket there, but noteworthy.
All right. Stuart Skinner, a lot of talk about whether the Oilers would make a change in net. Ultimately, they are sticking with Skinner. Ryan, not a big surprise considering this guy, he's Mr. Game 4.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the stats now. What is he, 6-0 and a
Yes,
955?
yeah.
6-0 and a 955 in Game 4. So this is Stuart Skinner's sweet spot. He's in the zone in game number 4. I'm not surprised at all. I did not think for a moment that they were going to make a goaltending change. Skinner showed himself to be a great bounce-back goaltender. Funny moment with him today. He comes in to do his media availability. We're in this tiny room, and he is just leaking. I mean, he was sweating like crazy, just dripping off of him and stuff. So we were joking with him about, certainly putting in the work. But an interesting comment from Skinner too, Pierre, about the potential for that change in net.
Yeah, I thought you were going to mention that. Yeah, he said when asked about being the guy that's back in net tonight, he says, well, it's not time to panic. I said, wait a minute, that's our job to mention that, not yours. But his point is he's the starter, and he has a lot of respect for his battery mate in Calvin Pickard. But I agree, if you're going to Calvin Pickard tonight, it means there is a bit of panic. It means that you're trying to do something very drastic. No reason to do that at this point. Skinner's bounce-back ability is well chronicled. He's the right guy to go back in.
The last thing I'll finish with here, Mark, is right after Game 3, one of their worst performances of the playoffs, Leon Draisaitl addressed the group. Stuart Skinner let us know that. He said his message was about staying calm in this moment and recognizing that they can be a heck of a lot better. So Draisaitl set that tone right after Game 3, and it'll be interesting to see how that resonates tonight.
And just on Sergei Bobrovsky, and I want to stress this again because I think it gets underplayed, having double off days before Game 3 and having double off days before Game 4 for a 36-year-old goalie, who I know the Panthers are always kind of stressing about his workload and his energy levels, it's a huge. No player in this Stanley Cup final will have benefited more, I believe, than the double off days twice.
Even better for a 64-year-old media guy.
Unbelievable.
I think you guys are both ready for this game tonight. I think we all are after a couple days off between games. Let's get it going. Bobrovsky, by the way, allowed 5 goals. 16 shots got pulled in Game 4 in last year's Stanley Cup final. Skinner said he was getting a lot of text messages from friends, calling him Mr. Game 4, why you have so much success. He says, I don't know, I can't explain it, but he did say he does feel like he gets stronger as this series progresses.